And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this first day of March 2022. Well, it is an historic day, and what a glorious day it is right here in Brisbane. As we know, right after all the floods and the rains, it is now 27 degrees and sunny. We'll show you some of the glimpses of what's happening, the update with the floods. Here's this report first, and then we'll give our version of it.
Well, look, it's an absolutely beautiful sunrise here in Brisbane this morning, but today there are about 20,000 householders, it's estimated, who will be waking up and starting to assess the damage. Not just householders as well, business owners too. And just in the last couple of minutes, since we've been here this morning, I'm on the banks of the Brisbane River here. I just want to show you what's going on. This sort of thing will be happening all over Brisbane today. What you can see there is some pumping of water there. Now, it is just extraordinary. It had been confirmed yesterday by the Bureau of Meteorology. Brisbane has had 80% of its annual rainfall in the last 6 days. So clearly that has inundated so many people. The car park underneath us here is about 3 metres deep in water. So that's what the pumpers are doing there. Behind that, you can see a crane on a barge. Now, that is part of the construction of the Green Bridge, which is happening in Brisbane. Yesterday, there was a major emergency on the river because the crane and the barge actually broke free of some of its moorings. It was listing, and there was a real concern that it was going to actually start to head downstream. And Patrick, on the camera, let's just start to move down here so we can show people. So you can see there the speed at which the Brisbane River is moving at the moment. There was another high tide last night at about 8 p.m. of around 3.5 metres. If you look down here, Patrick and Michael, what you can see down there is Howard Smith Wharves. It's a really great eating district. That was evacuated yesterday afternoon because of the concern that the crane was going to break free and start careening down the river like a missile. It was evacuated. I was actually evacuated. I was staying in one of the apartment blocks that you can see there, and police started hovering overhead, getting blasts on the loudspeakers saying, evacuate now, move away for your safety. They did eventually let us back in, but that was thousands of people who live in the apartments here on the Brisbane River who had to evacuate. And Patrick, if you just tilt down, we can actually show people what it looks like really close up here on the Brisbane River. So that's the beautiful riverside walkway that you can see there, completely underwater. And it is right like that, right the length of this river. Now, there is going to be another high tide in a couple of hours. They're expecting that that's going to be about 3.7 metres, Michael, which is just slightly under what it peaked at yesterday. And the news for people living in Queensland.
There are, ladies and gentlemen, that we were asked to evacuate. Yes, we were, and because she lives in the building next to ours, so and the building next to that is where our studios is. So here's what was happening yesterday when the police asked everyone to leave and evacuate because of that crane which was going to come and hit the Howard Street wharves. This is live coverage. This is from Brisbane Indian Times and Australian Indian Radio, the camera. So as you can see, the police and the ambulance all were in attendance, and they were all asking people to just move on from there, diverting them away. There were helicopters, there were police boats in the river. Everyone was asked to go, and in the lower levels of the apartments, we were asked to evacuate and come to the next building here. So there was a major emergency. Well, it was something which was known as a proactive, because if something would have happened, that was a massive crime, and with the speed that it would have come and hit the Howard Street off, that would have had a major impact. So the police and everyone were pretty quick to move in and direct people away from there. As you can see from these scenes, all the buildings in the apartments, they were evacuated. People were asked to leave. No one was allowed on Howard Street wharves, and the police cars just kept coming. So they did a good good job, of making sure that the area was evacuated and safe until that pontoon and the crane was secured once again. So these are some extraordinary scenes that you can see right here in Brisbane, and that's moving on to Howard Street. Those sorts are actually right from our studios here. So let's take a look at the river. As was mentioned that there would be at high tide soon. So this is where it is sitting at the moment, just side of the walkway, and later on with the full tide, if there is any more progress, we will keep you updated. And the morning walk that we normally go to, this is what it looked like this morning. So this is all live coverage from Australian Indian radios. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio, and now you can see what this is. And of course, today is also a very, very special day. So let's see what's so special about today.
Shiva lives in Kailas. But what is Kailas? It's not a mountain as it is being thought. Kailas means where there is only celebration. Las means happiness, celebration. And only in Kailas you can find Shiva, or whenever you find Shiva Tattva, it will be Kailas. शिवरात्रि के दिन शिव तत्व पृथ्वी को छूती है। और वो शिव तत्व हमारे भीतर है।
Yes, wishing everyone all the very best for Shivratri, and of course it is a wonderful day, and today we know there's so many functions that have been organized, but please check with all the organizers before heading out to any of the temples to see what the arrangements are and how many people are allowed, and do check so that everything is up to date and clear before you head out to any of the temples today. We know that because of Shivratri being on 4 Pahars, people will be going in the morning, some will go in the afternoon. We are planning to be at Gayatri Mandir tonight. Fingers crossed, and if everything's okay and the roads are not closed and we're allowed to go, we will be there and hope to see you all there as well. Now this is an extraordinary story that we have been following as well. Right now, as we have seen scenes from here in Brisbane, but this extraordinary story comes from Lismore.
The thing that was so disturbing and that I keep reliving, is the cries for help from all the other roofs while we were lying there too, praying for help. And then once we got on that rescue boat, we had to duck our heads to avoid the power lines as we went under. It was so high, and all I could see was water and the tips of some roofs. A house actually caught fire while we were on the roof, and we could smell smoke and we could see it billowing over. And when we went past it, even though it was right up to the roof with water, it was still smoking. It was unbelievable. And then Lismore was just a lake of water, just a lake of water. I don't know how they're ever going to recover, if ever.
Lita, when you were on the roof and you were hearing those calls, what was it? People, just give me a sense of the sounds.
Yes, I think so. We all did it. We were all calling out cooey and help every now and then. It just was to vent a little bit of, not anger, but, we just had to let something out.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. As I mentioned before, that story there came all the way from Lismore. And right now we need to keep moving on and take a look at some of the other stories breaking news today.
The SES had to call off its search efforts late last night with the conditions deemed too dangerous, and also taking into consideration fatigue of those SES workers. The last 24 hours have just been surreal for many here in our community. The SES were doing absolutely everything they could with trying to help with rescues, but of course then there ended up being so many people from the community who came in to lend a hand with those rescues, with those stories of distress and horror of people clinging to roofs and to whatever they could hold on to, making frantic calls to emergency services, trying to call for help. Now, here in Lismore this morning, it's obviously the light hasn't yet broken. You can see the water here behind me. It has actually started to recede just a touch. There's a bit of debris starting to appear, but Lismore itself and the CBD area is all within the basin. That there is actually a levee bank holding that water in, and effectively, even though the river is starting to decrease in height, the water within this basin area will need to be pumped out once that water reaches a certain level.
And there is rescue work and cleaning work that will be keep going on. As we know, as the water subsides, the best way to clean it is hose it as it starts moving out. If you leave it, there's lots of silt and debris that is there which is stuck, then it gets very hard. That's why you could see from that earlier clip that there were water pumps all along Brisbane River trying to be on top of the cleaning efforts and as they happen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's keep moving on, and welcome once again to Australian Indian Radio's live coverage of the flood. If you have just joined us right now, now let's hear this next story on the survivor.
I'm sitting on a table, my feet are in the water, there's nowhere to go. And once we've got about another 6 inches and we're all we're going to have to swim out. I don't know what we can do. Oh, and the fridge is just about to go. Oh, dear. Yes? People next door are on the roof. We're going to have to somehow get on the roof. I'm sorry.
Are you going to be able to get on the roof, do you think?
We don't know. We don't know. We're going to try. Look, I'm going to have to go. This is getting serious now.
Well, thankfully, Leda and the others were able to scramble onto the roof and were finally rescued yesterday afternoon. Leda joins us now. Good morning to you. I'm very glad to see your face because you worried a lot of us.
And then we followed up that story, and isn't that an amazing story of, how they could manage to get up there on the roof. Well, of course, all this goes about the warnings that need to be sent out early to everyone in the flood-prone areas, and not after the event, but before, if they could be evacuated. It could save, a lot of problem and possible loss of life. Well, during all of this, our resilience has been tested.
The images, the stories, the reports that we're seeing, they're truly heartbreaking and indeed very distressing. And they come on top of what can only be described as an unprecedented period of time for New South Wales and our neighbours further afield. You've only got to look over the last couple of years. So many of our communities were on the knees with drought. We then saw the unprecedented bushfire season of 1920 and all the resultant damage and destruction and displacement. We then came out of that into storms and floods. We've now had 18 months of COVID and all the different variants of COVID. And then as we came into the end of 21, we've seen considerable rainfall events and more flooding, resulting in 70 local government areas across the state declared natural disasters. And now with this extraordinary concentration of rainfall and flooding in northeastern New South Wales so far, we're progressing another 17 local government areas for natural disaster declarations with a necessarily strong focus on the northeast corner. So our resilience as people, as local communities, has absolutely been challenged and tested over these last few years, Lisa. But in the face of adversity, we continue to see a remarkable resolve and a remarkable camaraderie, this remarkable mateship that pulls together to help and support one another, which is critical.
What's the job ahead for you then? What do you do to try and support these communities?
Our focus right now, Lisa, if we're looking at the northeastern corner of the state with the flood, is really to back in and support the State Emergency Service and Commissioner York and all her team right across the state, and everybody that's working together with the primary focus on preserving life, saving life and protecting those that are being impacted by these extraordinary events. Obviously, we're already turning our mind now to what is going to be needed with the short-term and immediate relief arrangements. So beyond evacuation centres and temporary shelter, what is the clean-up, what is the washout, what is the short, medium and longer-term recovery arrangements that will be needed. The arrangements between the state, the Commonwealth and local governments in my decades of experience has never been stronger, has never been more united, has never been more together, and we're already discussing and working up in the background the supports of the types of different supports and programs that will be necessary as we progress. Our focus needs to remain on the response effort and supporting that, but absolutely the relief and recovery will run parallel and kick in very quickly as waters start to recede from communities in a lot of these areas.
And that is wonderful to see that the camaraderie that's been talked about, and it is always good to see people then coming together and helping each other in times like this, when the times of need. And one of the key points is that, if you can help anyone, please help. But if you don't have to be out and about, don't. Please stay put and don't create to the problem and try and contain it as much as we can. Well, right now, some international news. Well, Russia's UN representatives blames the conflict on West Ukraine.
Disregard the position of the Russian Federation runs counter to the very bedrock of the United Nations. There's a need to find common ground, regardless of our Western partners' attempts to avoid this, including when they disregarded our legitimate concerns in connection with NATO policy and Western countries' breach of the core principles of the OSCE on indivisibility of security. To conclude, Mr. President, I wish to state that the Russian Federation did not begin these hostilities. The hostilities were unleashed by Ukraine against its own residents, the residents of Donbass, and all of those who are dissenters. Russia is seeking to end this war. Thank you.
So there you go. There's always different perspectives, and you have to look at all the perspectives before you make those decisions. Well, right now, what we have seen some, scenes of refugees leaving Ukraine. Heartbreaking scenes all the way from the Ukraine, especially in that freezing conditions, having to flee, not knowing what's going to happen. It is a terrible situation to be in. When you look at some people, it's with no particular fault of theirs. It's the governments and the infighting that goes from there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to go to our daily India report. With that, let's welcome Himanshu.
Welcome to Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India. In our first story, India has evacuated around 2,000 of its citizens from Ukraine after the conflict with Russia began. Efforts are on to facilitate the exit of the remaining stranded Indians through various border transit points to the neighbouring countries. Indian Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla at a media briefing said he also held separate meetings with the ambassadors of Ukraine and Russia and shared with them the locations of the Indian citizens in Ukraine for their protection. He also said, though the border crossings to Hungary and Romania are functioning, the exit point to Poland has been clogged with hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and foreign nationals trying to leave the strife-torn country through Poland. Shringla said that was a problem area. Shringla added that Indians who are near the borders of Hungary, Romania and Slovakia are being guided towards the respective border points in phases. Around 1,000 Indians have already been flown out of Romania and Hungary, and another 1,000 have been evacuated from Ukraine through the land routes. Approximately 2,000 Indian citizens were in Kyiv, and many of them have begun to move to the western part of the country. Shringla further said the Indian embassy in Ukraine had suggested that those who were located in the eastern areas, including Kyiv, should start moving westwards to avoid the areas of increasing conflict, and that they should come near the border points. India is going to share with the ICRC the locations of the main areas where Indians are concentrated. India on February 25th set up camp offices in Lviv and Chernovitsi towns in western Ukraine to facilitate the transit of Indians to Hungary, Romania and Poland. India also positioned teams of officials at the Zahony border post in Hungary, Krakowiak as well as Shehyani Mediak land border points in Poland, Vajany Namek in the Slovak Republic and Sukiva transit point in Romania to coordinate the exit of Indian nationals from Ukraine. India is using the land routes to evacuate its citizens as Ukraine has closed its airspace for civilian aircraft following the Russian attack. The United States has waived in-person interview requirements for many Indian visa applicants, including students and workers at its diplomatic missions in India until 31st December 2022. The United States has waived in-person interviews for applicants eligible for visa categories that include students, workers, culture and extraordinary ability. To be eligible for the expanded interview waiver program, applicants for these visa classifications must have previously been issued any category of US visa without having ever been refused a US visa and do not indicate ineligibility or potential visa ineligibility. The US Embassy in New Delhi and its consulates in Chennai, Hyderabad, Kolkata and Mumbai cities will release more than 20,000 additional waivers appointments for spring 2022 to allow qualified applicants to make use of the new interview waiver authority. India abstains from the UN Security Council vote to call for an emergency General Assembly session on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. As the Russian-Ukraine conflict enters day 5 and tensions escalate amid a nuclear threat by Russian President Vladimir Putin, the United Nations Security Council has called for a rare emergency special session of the 193-member General Assembly to discuss the crisis. India abstained from a procedural vote taken in the UNSC to call for the rare special emergency session of the UNGA on Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Meanwhile, New Delhi welcomed Moscow and Kyiv's decision to hold talks at the Belarus border. The resolution was adopted with 11 votes in favor. India, China and the UAE abstained while Russia voted against the resolution. This will be only the 11th such emergency session of the General Assembly since 1950. The 15-nation Security Council met on February 27 afternoon to hold the vote on the emergency special session of the 193-member General Assembly on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This comes 2 days after the Russian veto blocked a UNSC resolution on its aggression against Ukraine. The vote calling for the UNGA session was procedural, so none of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, China, France, Russia, the UK and the US could exercise their vetoes. The Government of India made it mandatory for exporters to file registration cum membership certificate applications via a common digital portal only. India's Commerce Ministry has made it mandatory for exporters to file registration cum membership certificate applications through a common digital portal. This aims at promoting ease of doing business for the trading community. According to the foreign trade policy, a registration cum membership certificate is required for exporters in order to avail benefits under the policy. Holding the certificate can also help exporters in availing benefits with respect to customs and excise. The certificate is issued by export promotion councils and commodity boards. According to a communication of the Directorate General of Foreign Trade of India, the electronic platform to facilitate electronic issuance renewal amendment of RCMC registration certificate has been implemented. The platform aims at providing an electronic, contactless single window for RCMC, RC-related processes. It has been stated that the prevailing procedure of submitting applications directly to the designated registering authorities will continue only till March 31st this year. All regional authorities have been requested to ensure that they are on board on the eRCMC portal before March 31st. They have also been advised to conduct outreaches and issue suitable advisories to the members, exporters to use the platform. The Government of India has cleared an amendment to the foreign direct investment policy to allow up to 20% FDI under the automatic route in the state-owned life insurance corporation. The Government of India has approved a proposal to allow foreign direct investment up to 20% in life insurance corporation through the automatic route. The decision is expected to open doors for foreign investors who are keen to participate in the upcoming initial public offering of LIC scheduled for March 2022. This is considered to be India's largest public offering. At present, the FDI policy did not prescribe any specific provisions for foreign investment in LIC, which is a statutory corporation established under LIC Act 1956. The policy permits FDI in insurance companies and intermediaries or insurance intermediaries in the insurance sector. The FDI ceiling for public sector banks is 20% on the government approval route. Since LIC does not fall in any of these categories and no limit is prescribed for foreign investment in LIC under the LIC Act, the government has decided to allow foreign investment up to 20% for LIC and such other bodies corporate. The government is planning to take LIC to the markets next month by selling 5% of its holding in the largest insurer through an IPO, which is likely to generate huge interest among foreign investors. The change in the FDI policy for LIC will ensure that such investors do not face any hurdles while subscribing to the public offer. India also approved other changes to the FDI policy aimed at improving ease of doing business and in turn higher investments into the country and job creation. The government aims to facilitate investment into India through the policy reforms which have so far led to record FDI inflows into the country. Rohit Sharma-led Indian team beat Sri Lanka by 6 wickets in their third and final T20 at Dharamshala in Himachal Pradesh state in India. With this win, the men in blue equalled the world record for the most successive wins in T20 international cricket. India beat Sri Lanka by 6 wickets in the third and final T20 at Dharamshala in Himachal Pradesh. The Rohit Sharma-led Indian team registered their 12th consecutive T20 international win to equal Afghanistan's record for most T20 international wins on a trot by a test-playing nation. The unbeaten run began during the T20 World Cup as India shook off decisive defeats to Pakistan and New Zealand to win their remaining 3 matches. India was knocked out before the business end of the tournament, but the men in blue have been clinical in the shortest format of the game ever since. After beating Sri Lanka, the Indian team, the Asian Giants, ranked number 1 in the world, completed a 3-0 sweep of the series, their third successive sweep of the T20 International Series since the T20 World Cup last year. India also moved ahead of New Zealand with their 40th win at home in the third T20 International. The first look and title of the 5th movie of the legendary CBI series have been released by the makers. Mammootty has joined hands with senior filmmaker K. Madhu once again for the much-awaited 5th installment of the CBI series. The project, which has been tentatively titled CBI 5, will have Mammootty once again playing the iconic character Sethu Rama Iyer. The much-awaited title announcement motion poster of CBI 5 has now got a release date. The movie title is CBI 5 The Brain. The title video was released. The poster features the series' iconic background score with Sethurama Iyer's iconic posture hands tied behind the back. The title of the film is shown on the motion poster with the caption Most Violent Investigator in the World. Sethurama Iyer rebooted. The fifth part of the film comes long after the release of Narayan CBI in 2005. The first film in the series, Oru CBI Diary Kurip, was released in 1988. The sequel, Jagratha, was released in the next year, and in 2004, Sethurama Iyer CBI. CBI 5, The Brain, will be directed by K. Madhu, who has directed other films. That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report.
And thank you very much for that, Himanshu. Well, right now, let's go to Mauritius. Of course, why Mauritius? Because, you know, in Mauritius they have the Ganga Talao, which I have had the chance of moving, and they have one of the biggest statue of Shivji. And of course, at Ganga Talao, the biggest festival that takes place there, it's Shivratri. So let's take a look at some of the pictures coming from the Mauritius right now. So as you can see, that is quite imposing, and you can see that statue from miles away. So there we go, the Rath Yatra coming for the Shivratri. This is all happening at the Ganga Talao in Mauritius today. And as we know that the Ganga Talao is a very auspicious place, and it's very beautiful, and the way it's done, this is one of the major festivals that they mark in Mauritius. The floats there with Shiv Parvati and the float, and the settings there is always so Jai Jai Kara, of course you can see Shivji's float and very well decorated floats coming in there as well. Om Namah Shivaya, and of course Mahakali, Sakti, Plain Desperate. So there's all different mandalis and organizations who create their own floats to take part in the float leading up to Ganga Talao, where the huge mega festival takes place. And it's amazing, that even the tourism of Tourism Mauritius always promotes this event as well. So you can see all different entries there with their floats. And that is the Ganga Talab, which is in Mauritius, and it is treated in the same way as Ganges is treated in India. So all these are entries by different groups and different religious organizations who have had their floats taking part in it. And there's a long walk, people take part in that. So it's amazing to see how well they celebrate this, and just look at that, it's just amazing. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, and right now I'd like to leave you with some of the functions and events taking place here in Brisbane. And of course, if you're heading off to any of the functions or events, make sure you check with the organizers before you head out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you today. And wishing you all the very best for Shivratri. And until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. Don't forget that tomorrow we'll also have 2 segments. The news segment at 9, and then, of course, the real estate update with Usha Chandra at 10 a.m. Until then, it's goodbye from me.